interview. And I would say just for the Stanford piece of it and really the back and forth with Collinsworth, if you haven't heard the interview, I highly recommend it. It was a fantastic interview. There was a lot of little things that I took away back in his Stanford days when they played Notre Dame. He talked about having to hit Jerome Bettis. Like, there was a lot of cool things that came out of that interview, so I would check it out.
All right. And real quick, before you go on, I do want to talk about that a little bit more, just because at that point, when I'm going to talk a little bit about his time at Stanford and that whole part of that interview, because that got me super jacked up, because that period of time for John Lynch was when I was a senior in high school and my first year out of high school and college. And I had season tickets. My brother and I had season tickets to Stanford. We just happened to get them in 91, and then we kept them in 92 and whatnot. And so I got to go to a lot of those games. And so I remember John Lynch as a quarterback. I remember him losing that job to Columbus like he talked about. I remember all that stuff. So that's super cool to me to hear that. And then I liked it too, because when I went into college, I started off as a quarterback, and I ended up getting beat out by a guy that went Division I. And I switched over to kind of did the same thing he did. I wanted to play. So I went to the coach and I said, hey, where can I get on the field? And he switched me to free safety. And so it's just kind of a whole funny deal there. And, I ended up switching back to quarterback later on, but it was really cool to hear. I remember watching that game against Notre Dame. I remember watching that game and just, hearing him talk about it, brought some goosebumps. And if you're a 49er fan, like Jesse said, you really want to hear that interview, because although he's talking about his time at Stanford, his coach when this was happening against Notre Dame was Bill Walsh, and he starts talking about where he learned to be a safety was from Ronnie Lott, and he goes into the time that he had with Walsh, and how that week against Notre Dame, that was really the first time where they really saw Bill Walsh, the Bill Walsh like they saw at at the 49ers, and the guy that's just chewing your butt out and everything like that, and Mr. Perfectionist. And he talked about his because Walsh, before he came back to Stanford, had been doing Notre Dame games, so there was some rivalry there with Lou Holtz. That was really cool to hear as well. And so it was a great, if you guys can hear it, like I said, I give John Lynch a hard time as a general manager, but when he was as a player and a lot of those kind of things, I look, he's a stud as far as I'm concerned. I mean, he's at the Hall of Fame now, but I just remember those days, like, I was, a little bit older than the mean there, but, not much. And that's kind of things stick with you as you get older.
Yeah.